Baptist. This is Pastor John Avery here. I'm the pastor at Living Water Community Church in Oakland, Maine. Some of you know, some of you might not know, is that you guys support us as a church financially every single month, and you guys have actually given us a special additional gift to support a special ministry that we started at the beginning of this pandemic. So I want to kind of share kind of what we're doing in this pandemic. And so when this whole thing started, just like any church, we're trying to figure out, what are we going to do? We're trying to figure out services. And then once we got services figured out, then we started thinking, well, how are we going to respond to the needs of our community? And so one of the first things we thought of was food. Everyone needs food, and we knew that the soup kitchen was going to be closed down, that many other programs that normally give out food were going to be limited during this time. So we knew that there was going to be a problem with food, people in need getting food. So what we decided to do was start a meal program that we call Home Cooked to You. And so what we do is every single week, we literally cook up meals, and we put these meals into go boxes, and we deliver these meals to people's doorsteps all around the Waterville area. All right, so we are feeding between 200 and 300 people every single week. And for some of you that we are a small church. We're not a large church. God has blessed us, and we have grown over the past year. But at the same time, we're doing something that takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. But man, God has blessed this thing beyond anything we can imagine. We call the people every single week. And we ask for prayers. We ask them if they need any prayer requests. So the hard thing is we can't really connect face to face, besides the delivery drivers handing the bags to them. But besides that, we are getting prayer requests. We're seeing some of the people actually watching our services online, which is awesome to see. We are starting to hear back from them. They're commenting to us. We're having more conversations with people. We just did a drive-in church service this past week. Some of those people that are receiving meals came to that drive-in church service. And so it's really awesome to see what God is doing. And we're considering going further with this. We don't really know what this means for us as a church, but we're really excited to be able to do this. So I want to show you we're going to switch scenes here really quick and show you a quick video of what this looks like. This is done on an iPhone, so this is too, but this is done a little bit more fast-paced and kind of show you what this meal program looks like. So take a look at that.
Welcome to our KFC Coffee Cat meals. We've got 120 pounds of garlicky creamy mashed potatoes. Out here's the chicken fry. Notice the 6 feet distance between people. So the bowl gets mashed potatoes, gravy, corn, cheese, fried chicken. Here's the finished product. A homemade baked good. And some sort of bread product. We've got 64 of these bags. Sign up for next week. We're doing chilies and chowders.
So once again, guys, thank you so much for supporting us every single month. We're so blessed by you as a church, and so be praying for us. We are praying for you as well. I know this is tough for every single church in this time, but we love you, and God bless. Thank you, guys.
One of the exciting parts about doing church like this for the past few months has been thinking about new and creative ways we can impact our community and beyond, even though there have been so many restrictions in place. The people at Living Water Community Church in Oakland, Maine have found very creative ways to meet the needs of their community. Because you've been faithfully supporting Calvary financially during this pandemic, in addition to our regular monthly support, we've been able to send Living Water $1,000 to help the weekly food ministry in their local area, a ministry that began as a direct result of this COVID-19 crisis. This means that we together had the opportunity to join with the followers of Jesus 550 miles away to feed nearly 300 people that you and I have never met. Isn't that awesome? Pastor John at Living Water called me this week and shared that as a result of that weekly ministry, some of those families that received meals attended the church's outdoor worship service last Sunday, and others have been watching them online. Thank you for making a difference in the lives of so many families in Central Maine. If you haven't started giving online yet, you can start today by going to the website below or just download the Give Plus app to your phone and you can start. In just a moment, Pastor Larry will continue our series from the book of Ruth entitled God in the Midst of Hardships. Before he comes, let's worship together with our praise team.
This is my prayer in the desert, when all that's within me feels dry. This is my prayer in my hunger and need. My God is the God who provides. And this is my prayer in the fire, in weakness, a trial, or pain. There is a faith proved of more worth than gold, so refine me, Lord, through the flame. I will bring praise, no weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and he is here. And this is my prayer in the battle, when triumph is still on its way. I am a conqueror and co-heir with Christ, so firm on his promise I'll stand. I will bring praise, no weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and he is here. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing, I have a reason to worship. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing, I have a reason to worship. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing, I have a reason to worship. Won't you worship? All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing, I have a reason to worship. I will bring praise, I will bring praise, no weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and he is here. I will bring praise, I will bring praise, no weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and he is here. And this is my prayer in the harvest, when favor and providence flow. I know I'm filled to be emptied again. The seed I've received I will sow.
The praise team just reminded us of how God works in our lives when we feel as if we are overwhelmed by the hardships that happen around us. Think about the two opening verses to that song. This is my prayer in the desert, when all that's within me feels dry. Have you ever felt that? That desert feeling dry? And then it says, this is my prayer and my hunger in me. My God is the God who provides. The next verse says, and this is my prayer in the fire, in weakness or trial or pain. There is a faith proved of more worth than gold. So refine me, Lord, through the flames. When hardships come, God is at work developing our character to be more and more like His character. God will provide. Are you looking for His provision? God will refine you, even though it takes heat from the flames of life. And are you willing to have God's fire make you as pure as gold? Well, let's begin our time by going to the Lord in prayer. Father, your desire is to mold us, to make us to become more and more like Jesus Christ. I pray that you will open up our hearts to the changes each one of us need in our character along the way. Father, your desire is not to make us comfortable in this life, but to bring us to maturity. And Lord, I pray that we will follow you each day by picking up our cross and following you. Lord, may your will be done now as we continue this study of Ruth. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen. Chuck Swindoll, in his book entitled The Tale of the Tardy Ox Cart, told the story about two porcupines in northern Canada and how they reflect how humans often treat each other. He said in the book, they huddled together to get warm, but their quills pricked each other, so they moved apart. Before long, though, they were shivering, so they sidled close again. Soon both were jabbed again. Same story, same ending. The point is, they needed each other, but they kept needling each other. Sounds like marriages sometimes, doesn't it? Or even friendships. There's that need for each other, but we continue to poke each other, jab at each other, find ourselves in prickly relationships. Well, we're in this series in the book of Ruth entitled, God in the Midst of Hardships. Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi, were in the middle of difficult days that centered around the loss of her 3 men in their lives. They also dealt with famine. And then there's this long journey that they made as the two widows headed to Bethlehem. Relationships can be difficult in good times, but hardships can bring a magnifying glass on how we handle relationships. Sometimes we become frustrated, sometimes we become angry, and we take it out on the people who are closest to us. Like those porcupines, our relationship can be prickly. Well, last week we saw how hardships can make us bitter, or they can make us better. Your attitude when hardships occur depends upon your character. And this morning, I want us to think about character does matter. Your character matters. We're going to look at chapter 2 today in the book of Ruth, where the opening chapter spent more time on Naomi. Now we're going to turn toward Ruth. Now, this is a lengthy passage today, and we really don't have time to read through all of them. I hope that you're going to be reading these verses at home. But I'm going to read to you part of those verses and then tell you the rest of the story. Well, in Ruth 2, beginning with verse 1, we find this. It says, "Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, 'Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him whose sight I shall find favor.' And she said to her, 'Go, my daughter.' So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech." Well, we're introduced to Boaz. Actually, we receive the description of Boaz before Ruth even meets him. Boaz is related to Naomi by marriage. We are told that they are of the same clan as Naomi's deceased husband, Elimelech. Boaz is described here as a worthy man. That means among the community, he was a man of good standing. He had good character. With the people who knew him, they immediately knew he was someone of good character, a worthy man. Ruth asked permission of her mother-in-law, Naomi, to go out into the field near them and glean the barley harvest. Notice the nature of Ruth here at the beginning. She doesn't want to do anything that is against Naomi's authority. So she asked if it was okay to go out. Gleaning. You may not know what that means. Gleaning was an action actually that's found all the way back in the law of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible. It's an action where the poor, the widowed, and the orphan could gather grain that has been left behind by harvesters that was near the edge of the road or along the fence. Even though the law of Moses commanded all landowners to allow this gleaning action, apparently not every landowner obeyed the law of Moses. Ruth, when she went out to find a landowner in whom she found favor to be able to perform this gleaning action. She found herself gleaning, though, at the field owned by Boaz. We learn in the next set of verses after this that Boaz spotted Ruth gleaning on the edges and inquired with his hired hands, "Who is that woman?" They told Boaz, "She is that young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi when Naomi came home to Bethlehem from Moab." They also told Boaz, "She's a hard worker. She started work early this morning and has worked ever since except for one short period of rest." So Boaz walked over to visit and meet Ruth. And then we pick up with this in verse 8. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I'm not one of your servants." Well, so our story continues. Boaz heads straight to Ruth. He tells her, "Stay and glean from my field." Boaz told her, "Stay close, though, to my servant girls. I have ordered my men to leave you alone. If you're thirsty, go get some of the same water that the men are drinking, that water that's already been drawn out." From the text, it appears Ruth was getting ready to leave, actually, as Boaz was arriving. Since Boaz ordered his men to leave her alone, they may have done something to make her feel uncomfortable. Maybe one tried to touch her. Maybe they made rude and crass comments toward her. Maybe someone crudely attacked her heritage because she is a Moabite. She is a foreigner. She was looked down on. It may also be that she tried to get water from the same place as these young male workers, and they acted up around her. As the passage continues, though, we learn that the noon meal time has arrived. Boaz invited Ruth to have some of the bread that they're having, dip it in some of the wine that they have there. She was also given roasted grain to eat. We're told she had so much to eat, was given so much to eat, that she wrapped up the leftovers to take home later to Naomi. After the meal, she got up to glean again. This time, Boaz instructed his men something special. He instructed them to let her gather grain this time from the good stuff, not just what was left on the edges. He even told them, he says, "While you're at it, pull up some of that best grain. Leave it behind for her to pick up." Well, we're told Ruth worked till evening. And when done, she took the sheaves of grain that she had and she beat them out so that the edible grain would fall out from it. She then gathered this grain together, and we're told she had an amount called an ephah of barley grain. Well, from everything I've read, that would be the equivalent of enough grain for 2 women to eat for a whole week. And then we find our last verses of the day, beginning with verse 18. "And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, 'Where did you glean today, and where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you.' So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, 'The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz.' And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, 'May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead.' Naomi also said to her, 'The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers.' And Ruth the Moabite said, 'Besides, he said to me, you shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest.' And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, 'It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted.' So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law." Well, Ruth returned to her mother-in-law's home. Conversation started. "So Ruth, where did you glean today?" For the first time in our story, something interesting happens. Naomi sees the goodness of God instead of the bitterness that she has been harboring toward God. She knew Boaz. He's a close relative of her late husband. Naomi called him one of our redeemers, with the more literal meaning kinsman redeemer. A kinsman redeemer is an adult male blood relative who served as an advocate for any vulnerable or unfortunate member in the family clan. The purpose was to keep from any disruption of the clan's wholeness, the clan's well-being, by redeeming or restoring, whether it was property or persons or even the family line of the person. In the case of Naomi and Ruth, they were two poor widows with no hope of continuation and care of Elimelech's line or his property. At their death, the family property could possibly leave their clan. Redeeming it or keeping it in the family fell to the task of the kinsman redeemer. But as we will see in a couple weeks, Boaz is not first in line as kinsman redeemer. There would be a hierarchy involved with this, and the closest male relative would get first shot. Well, Ruth told Naomi all that Boaz did in providing and protecting her. Naomi told Ruth to do as Boaz said. You will find safety there as you glean. Ruth stuck near to the young servant girls in the field and worked until the end of the harvest season. Well, character does matter. The character found in chapter 2 takes a large turn away from bitter character. The bitter character that Naomi exemplified in chapter 1. Let's look closer at the character of Ruth and Boaz in this story and what it teaches us about relationships that we should have with other people. Character matters when hardships arrive in life. Our true character is revealed when hardships arrive. Let's start with godly inward character that's found in our story. Godly inward character is revealed through unselfish motives. Ruth asked Naomi for permission to find them food. Local customs notwithstanding, she didn't have to do that, but she did. Think about it. Even though Naomi had been bitter, Ruth was better. Let's face it, it can be hard to be kind to a bitter person. 3 times in this chapter, Ruth demonstrated exceptional respect and consideration for Naomi. Ruth's motives spoke volumes about her. Unselfish motives mean I place my desires aside for the desires of others. Hardships bring out different motives, and sadly, some people try to steal during hardships with scams. You may have, during this COVID-19, received phone calls or emails from these type of people who try to take advantage of others. Just 2 weeks ago, actually, I heard our governor tell this story about a company that tried to steal money from states and hospitals by taking money for surgical masks and other things that they never even intended on creating. They were caught, but not until people lost millions of dollars. Thankfully, in times like this, though, many people give unselfishly to those in need. God calls us to unselfish motives. Well, godly inward character is revealed also through inner peace. In this passage, we really see 3 marks of inner peace. The first of which is humility. We find in verse 10 of Ruth bowing to the ground before Boaz. When you have an inner peace in your life, it's easy to be humble. You have no problem thinking of others as better than yourself. Inner peace gives you strength to bow in your heart to others. But inner peace also brings gratitude. Verse 13, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant. Peace allows us to acknowledge the good others share with us. We acknowledge gratitude for all that we have been given. But then within inner peace, we also find compassion. Verse 18, it says, she gave her mother-in-law what food she had left over after being satisfied. Ruth has this meal at noon of that day. She then takes and wraps up what's left over, has to carry it with her the rest of the day while she is working. She works the rest of the day. But she has this compassion for Naomi to bring that food home, the food that she had already had at noon, bring the leftovers and share it with Naomi. Inner peace helps us to take eyes off selves and have compassion for others. Humility, gratitude, compassion are natural byproducts of someone living with inner peace, especially during hardships. They're not in competition with others. They're just thankful for what they do have. Likewise, those without peace, who live in fear, turn inward, become selfish during hardships, and think only of themselves. Well, another thing about godly inward character, it's also revealed through godly devotion. Back when Naomi and Ruth started this adventure, this journey, Ruth proclaimed in chapter 1, your God will be my God. I find that truly amazing that Ruth sought God in the midst of Naomi's bitterness. Naomi has been revealing anger toward God, bitterness toward God, yet Ruth was inspired by her God. It just goes to show that God can work in lives despite us. Oh, He wants to use us. That's His choice. But sometimes He has to go beyond us. Boaz proclaimed in verse 12 that the Lord will repay the goodness of Ruth. God wants to use you and me for others during hardships. Do you have that inward godly devotion? Well, when godly character is found inwardly, it will be demonstrated through godly outward character. Godly outward character will do several things. First is acknowledge others' strengths instead of weaknesses. Acknowledge other people's strengths instead of always looking at their weaknesses. We live in a time where people find the weaknesses of others and they attack. They attack like they are sharks smelling blood in the water. Somehow people think it makes themselves greater by demeaning others in their weaknesses. Boaz, he lifted up Ruth. In verse 10, she called herself a foreigner. She is self-conscious of that negative status in the community toward her. Boaz, though, didn't see foreigner. Instead, he helped her to feel favor because of her goodness toward Naomi. Now, no two things are exactly the same, okay? And for a moment, just put politics aside. Get that out of your head for a moment. But Ruth would be more like a modern-day undocumented immigrant. She would be looked down on. She would be not well thought of as a Moabite. Boaz looked beyond the title of undocumented and instead saw inspirational and godliness. Well, also, godly outward character will complement character rather than criticizing condition. Boaz was the rich man. Ruth was poor. The rich often looked down on the poor. In that day, males had all the rights. Females had few rights, many none at all, and in Ruth's case, being a foreigner, she would really have no rights. But Boaz could see beyond Ruth's financial condition in life. He could see beyond her gender or sex. She was more than appearance and clothing. He saw the goodness of her heart. Her clothes were not the best. Her nationality wasn't the right one for where they lived. But her heart was designer made. I'm not sure what this outcome would look like if Naomi had tried to glean Boaz's field. Remember, before Ruth's experience with Boaz, Naomi was bitter toward God, bitter toward others. Her heart would reveal anger instead of humility. Bitterness is an ugly attire, an ugly clothing that shines out from the heart towards others. Ruth, though, on the other hand, revealed an attire of godliness. Also, godly outward character will appreciate what others do. Are you appreciative of what others do? Ruth appreciated that the workers were told to leave the best grains of head out for her to pick up along the way. Boaz appreciated Ruth's hard work. Do we have gratitude toward others? Our culture operates more on what I'm owed rather than thankfulness at times. Too often in churches, members turn to more of what I get rather than how I show appreciation to others. True inward gratitude will find its way outwardly toward others. Also, godly outward character will perform acts of kindness. Boaz invited Ruth to sit with them for lunch. He didn't have to do that. She's an outsider, a foreigner. She's not an employee of his. Yet he was kind to her. Ruth's kindness to Naomi was catching. When we are kind, it makes it easier for others to be kind. It's hard to be angry with someone who is congenial and kind. I love hearing the stories of people at places like fast food drive-thrus where one person pays for the person behind them, who pays for the person behind him, who pays for the person behind them, and so forth. The actions become called paying it forward. Acts of kindness begetting acts of kindness. I want to tell you something, and I've been debating whether to tell this because I don't want it to come off feeling like bragging or anything, but it shows how God can take kindness and multiply it. Deb and I feel very blessed right now during this time. And we did something for the other 12 neighbors, the other 12 homes on our street last week while we were in this stay-at-home adventure. This is what I've been amazed at. By the positive reaction from neighbors we didn't even know. We didn't even know their name. Now, this is not about pat on the backs. And as I said, I've been debating whether to mention it. But maybe it will challenge you to do something for your neighborhood. Even while social distancing, you can still perform the art of neighboring as we explored at Calvary Baptist last fall. You can be neighbor to neighbor. Godly inward character transforms to outward character because of the great respect we have for others, even those we don't know. Last week I mentioned that hardships will make you either better or bitter. When we have a strong, godly character within, we become better. And we reveal Jesus in our outward character to those around us. It is because Jesus is in us, and we need to share the Jesus in us with others. when things are hardest, Jesus should shine the brightest. Author James Michener made a wise observation about respect. He said, "I was born to a woman I never knew and raised by another who took in orphans. I do not know my background, my lineage, my biological or cultural heritage. But when I meet someone new, I treat them with respect. For after all, they could be my people." Well, every human is a loved creation of God. They are your people. They are my people. They are people who struggle with hardships. And God has placed you in their lives to be a source of strength. The big idea, the big thought is true godly character will shine from you on those around you during difficult days when Jesus is your Lord. You will be better rather than bitter. We have a deeper reason for character to matter, and He is called Jesus. He has been so good to us that we should model that godly nature to those around us. Maybe you're tired of these things. I know I am. Tired of backbiting, tired of all the angry politicking, all gossiping, especially gossiping among Christians. Those are qualities of bitterness and anger. God did not call us to be like Naomi. He called us to be like Ruth and Boaz. Character does matter. Your family, neighbors, fellow workers, friends, strangers, they're watching your character whether you realize it or not. Hardships have a tendency of revealing who we really are in Christ. Hardships can drive us to anger and bitterness toward others, or it can drive us to our knees in humility before our God. It's a matter of your character and whether that character is in Jesus Christ or not. Jesus wants to make you better today. I encourage you to give your life to Him. Well, let's close in prayer. Father, once again we come honored to be able to come into your very presence. And Lord, you did not call us to be bitter like Naomi was, as we saw in chapter 1. You've called us to be much better, to grow in maturity, to take on these inward godly characters deep within so that they will shine Jesus Christ outwardly to those around us. I pray right now, Father, for those that really are struggling in the midst of these hardships right now from COVID-19 or other hardships, that, Lord, you will work within them and help them to grow in you and to mature in you. Lord, I pray for those who do not know you yet as Lord and Savior, that, Father, they will turn their lives over to you today. Lord, help us to all be better people, not bitter people. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Now that Maryland is beginning to move into stage 1 of the reopening process, we are one step closer to worshiping together in person. When we return, one thing you can count on is that things are not going to be exactly like they used to be. This crisis has forced all of us to change the way we do certain things, and church is no exception. Some changes will be easy to adjust to, while others not so easy. Some changes will be short-term, others more long-lasting. Some people choose to stay home longer than others. Some are going to want to charge ahead quickly. Others are going to want to take it slow. As we begin to roll out this initial phase of our church reopening plan, this will be an opportunity for our individual character to shine through. We'll all be challenged to show the inward qualities that Pastor Larry talked about today. Qualities of unselfish character, inner peace, and godly devotion. But we can't wait until the first day that we gather together to begin preparing our hearts. You see, when you clicked on this worship service, we also provided you with a link to a very helpful post by Chuck Lawless entitled, 10 questions to consider before regathering. I want to invite you to click on that link and begin asking yourself these 10 questions before we ever come back together in person. In fact, let me share the first question with you because it's so critical for us. Dr. Lawless asked this. He says, are you praying for your church staff that we'll have the wisdom necessary for reopening? Now, I know so many of you have been sharing with us since this pandemic began that yes, you are praying. We've read your cards and emails, but please know that a week doesn't go by that we aren't spending many hours discussing and researching what it will take to reopen safely, and we still need your continued prayers. So watch our social media, your email, and our website this week for important details about our reopening plans. Remember that our online Bible study groups will continue meeting at various times on Sundays, and our church-wide study continues at 6:30 on Tuesday nights on Zoom. If you need an invite to any of these, just contact us at the email below. In the meantime, let's continue showing godly character to everyone we come into contact with, even from 6 feet away. See you soon.